Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm so happy to see you all. Welcome back to whoever joined last month and welcome to the new ones today. I'm so happy to have you all. We are just waiting. We had a couple of speakers that are joining us, just waiting for them. They kind of had a little bit of an emergency, but just to tell you a little bit about them. So it's Shady Noor and Selim. And so Selim and Shady and I have kind of been, I don't know if you guys noticed, there was kind of like a anti-sexual violence movement that started in Egypt in 2020 around, I think the same exact month or summer that I actually came out and started the Coptic survivor movement. So I've actually since then networked and spoken to so many really awesome activists and advocates in Egypt and men who speak up for women and against toxic masculinity very loudly and proudly and trying to raise awareness on social media. And actually, while getting to know these people, these activists and these organizations, we've also been able to combine forces on social media and use the power of social media to actually campaign against abusers or systems that are covering up for abusers in Egypt. And so we've actually accomplished since 2020, we've been able to actually expose abusers on social media. And then within hours, the police find them and arrest them just like that. So this is helping to push law enforcement in Egypt and the government in Egypt to actually step up and take action and do their part. They don't want these things exposed. So I guess we figured out the way to actually get Egypt to act on the sexual violence issue in Egypt. So I want to welcome them when they get here. I'm sorry for the lateness right now on what's going on. We also have Buvly here with us. Buvly joined us last time. Hi, Buvly. He's going to chime in with us. You can unmute, please.
Hey.
Hey. So Buvly, thank you for joining. I wanted you to, it was important for you to be here today because we're talking about this issue and I wanted to get your perspective from a mental health side and as a Coptic man. So I wanted, can you kind of just get us started a little bit on this conversation? Also maybe go into the issue that we have with the patriarchal systems that we're kind of trapped in.
Yeah, sure. So I'll start off by saying this is going to be off the cuff. I didn't prepare anything. So, but hopefully, I'll say a few things, and then if people want to chime in or have any questions, please feel free to do so. So yeah, I mean, I was born in Egypt, moved to Canada when I was 6 and pretty much grew in a very conservative household. I think one of the things when we look at a topic like toxic masculinity, a lot of people, maybe even men, would run away from that because they might think, oh, this is just a talk against masculinity and it's people trying to take away from what it means to be a man and all that. But I think it runs much deeper than that. And with the people that I work with in the mental health setting, a lot of it does stem from abuse and all kinds of abuse, right? Whether it's sexual abuse or physical abuse or verbal abuse. And especially in the Coptic community and the one that I've grown up in and I've witnessed and I've seen a lot of different things, there's definitely this idea that men tend to be, the voice keepers within the community, right? And it's whatever the men say goes. And I've, within my own family and wider group of people that I've witnessed, I've always seen how men are the ones who kind of have the final say or make decisions or kind of push for whatever change that they want within the community, right? And usually the voices of women and the greater community is usually not heard, right? And so I would say that's part of how we understand toxic masculinity, right? Another aspect to look at it from as well too, when we're looking at, say, the Coptic church perspective, is that when you look at leadership, it's all men, right? So all the voices come from priests, bishops, the Pope, who are all men, right? And that's not that's a very one-sided thing. I mean, that's the only thing that they have available, right? And so we have to continue to raise our voices in a way where we do have women in leadership roles and where men and women are working together to effectively cause change, right? So a topic like this today, I would say it's very important to bring out the voices of men in order to understand what is it that is actually happening and how we can work together to continue to raise awareness on this. One of the things that we can do when we're looking at, say, the Coptic Church and the hierarchy and how things are played out, one of the things that we can start and that we've had in the church and it's kind of weaned off, right? They don't use it anymore, is something called the General Lay Council, or in Arabic, it's known as Majlis al-Milli, right? And so the Majlis al-Milli, when it was active or had more of an active role in the church, it was a group of lay people who were part of this group that were making decisions, right? And so in this group, it doesn't have to be men, right? You can have women sitting on it and raising their voices and raising awareness about certain issues that are coming up in order to cause change, right? So that's, I would say, one of the ways that the church can step up and kind of revive this lay council again, where we can get women involved to talk about all the issues that are being raised. Another thing I would actually bring to the forefront as well too is how we're raising our men in our communities, right? I'm sure many of you are aware of this, and I don't have to go into a lot of detail, but we raise men in a way to say that they need to have a certain voice, and they have to be kind of breadwinners, and the women have to kind of listen to them, or whatever it is. You all know how men are raised within our community, and we have to slowly start changing that, right? So those are a little bit of kind of the things that I wanted to share. I don't know if you want me to add anything else, Sally, or speak to anything specifically.
Thank you so much, Bubbly. No, that's a great start. I really appreciate it. So great intro. Definitely agree with you. I really, after we chose this topic, we thought it would be really important to hear from the men, because I feel like it's mostly women that are always attending, mostly women that are speaking, but I think it's really important to hear from the men this time and get a good understanding of what you all see as positive masculinity versus toxic masculinity. And so we also have Selim here, one of our speakers, joining us. Hey, Selim.
Hello. I'm
Nice
very
to.
sorry I'm late.
It's okay, no worries. Thank you for joining us. So Selim, you're in Egypt, right?
Yep.
Cool. Thank you for staying up
Tragic.
late for us.
No, it's not that late actually. It's actually everyone is up to today because everyone's watching the soccer match, which seems very poignant in regards to the subject of today, given how soccer has always been kind of like kind of a core center of toxic masculinity here in Egypt, it kind of separated the quote unquote men from the boys, and the women. So it's quite interesting, watching these things kind of unfold, in our day. Tell me,
Yeah.
how do you want this to go? Do you want me to introduce myself? How would you like this to go? Kind of.
If you would please introduce yourself. I just said a little bit about how I met you and Shady and how we've been in this campaign against sexual violence on social media, and how we've been able to combine forces and have so much change already just in the past year. So go ahead and share what you want, your perspective, and just introduce yourself first, please.
Sure. Well, my name is Selim Abu Musallam. Yeah, I do live in Egypt. I've been working in assault police for a year and a bit, I think, at this point, kind of on off. Right now I'm off, and honestly, I'm very grateful for that because it kind of takes a very strong toll on your mental health. We did a couple of cases. Primarily, I started with the first major one that we kind of covered with ABZ, Hassam Zaki, and that was kind of the catalyst that kind of brought us to where we are now. I sat the Fairmont out, and then I kind of rejoined after that with the cases that followed that, JPEG and so forth. I don't know if you guys are familiar with these cases, but we've been kind of we were trying to do as many cases as possible, given we were very few volunteers that were able to do that. I was lucky to do my part from the beginning, and kind of back and forth with that. Uh, yeah, and it's incredibly difficult, but as men, I feel like kind of there's a tally of cultural and societal violence that I feel personally that every single man needs to atone to, and it's not just by not doing violent acts, right, or just not having a violent presence in society. There is more to do in regards to kind of atone to just our existence kind of implies a specific sort of violence, and that's something that you kind of realize. I don't want to seem to be like saying something super radical, because I've been told that kind of shuns men away from what I'm saying, but just being on the ground and seeing how tangible the violence that we cause just by being men and just presence in specific spaces is just incredibly overwhelming. And there's, I don't think, honestly, given that the fact that there's almost 2 years now since this kind of intifada that women have kind of spearheaded, I honestly don't think our space is to kind of be kind of to have this kind of pedestal, right? But that's unfortunately not possible, just because when I came out and I kind of spoke against ABZ, who's a serial rapist, just people in general were just kind of like more, they kind of felt, oh, it's so much easier to listen to a man speak about our problems, right? And it was kind of incredibly disheartening, right? Because the only reason that I was the one that kind of made a video to kind of talk about these problems was because the survivor could not talk about it legally. Sabah Khudair didn't feel comfortable talking in Arabic at the time. Shady has a very specific political presence, and I'm sure he's going to talk about that now, and it couldn't have been Shady. And Nadine Ashraf, who created AP, was still running it from the shadows, right? Because it was unsafe given the kind of work that she was doing at the time. Very brilliant work. She's a very brilliant woman. She was doing it anonymously, so they kind of asked if I could do it, and then it kind of blew up, right? And then they wrote an article about how, oh, the valiant men that are defending our rights, right? And there weren't really the same kind of articles written about the brilliant women that were doing it, right? Kind of like society kind of like just trends towards just listening to men, even when they're not even talking about their own issues, which was incredibly awful. It felt like all the quote unquote clout that I was gaining was just blood clout, right? I did not want that. I felt that that wasn't my space. That wasn't what I was raised to do. And it was incredibly disheartening to see. And I kind of acknowledge all of it. And I kind of tried to acknowledge my privilege because I had to, right? Because someone had to do that. And the people kept thanking me for doing the same thing, and it was kind of like an Ouroboros, a snake that's eating itself, right? And it was incredibly awful to kind of witness, because I do not want to be credited for something that is not mine to be credited for, right? Nadine Ashraf is a sub police. I'm not a sub police. I was just a volunteer that was helping her make a couple of posts to kind of help her investigate a couple of cases. But our role is not to be in the center of this or to be given pedestals to talk from. It's to kind of just echo what women are saying. And that's what I was trying to do. And I really do not think that our space to kind of talk about some of this structural violence is to kind of be in the pedestal. Or just, but until you told me, Sally, that this talk specifically is about toxic masculinity, I felt, well, this is something that we could talk about, because I think this is a problem that also stems within, and this is something that we could kind of shed light on, because
Yeah.
it's a very serious issue, which also causes serious violence towards men, and that causes them to self-harm and to feel, and a lot of men have, a lot of men, specifically here in Egypt or in general, have unaddressed eating disorders, right? Because they're supposed to like be present in a specific masculine form, and that leads them to not eat at all in a specific way, and that leads them to a lot of biological problems. That's just one example, right? Also, men are told to kind of shun their trauma away because they're men and they're not supposed to cry, they're not supposed to feel their emotions, and so on and so forth. And that is also a huge epidemic in all of our cultures, I feel still. Yeah, I'm also a, I guess if we're still doing introductions, I'm also a film director and a screenwriter. Yeah, and that's that's basically what I do.
Oh, it's breaking up a little bit, Selim. What was the last thing you said?
Oh, I just said that I also direct and I write screenplays and stuff.
Amazing, amazing, talented.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's breaking up a little bit. But can you try again? It's like kind of freezing.
I'll try. Yeah, it's fine.
Okay.
I'll change the internet.
Okay.
Maybe that will help.
So I just put the link to Assault Police, guys, in the chat. I also have in the post about this event, you'll find Selim and Shady's Instagram handles as well. Assault Police has what, like 350, almost 350,000 followers, right, Selim? So it's pretty much one of, if not the biggest group that calls out sexual violence in Egypt, right? I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about Assault Police and what?
Well, okay, sure. Can you hear me well now?
Mhm.
Oh yeah, Assault Police was founded by Nadine Ashraf. She started it from the shadows. Everything was super encrypted and super kind of in the shadows back then, because what she was doing was technically illegal in Egypt, which is calling out someone without state evidence, right? But it kind of gained a lot of popularity with Nadine on in the reins, and it kind of jumped like overnight, almost like 30 or 50,000 followers, right? Something that is incredible, and to her credit, obviously, because yeah, and she was also faced with a lot of threats because some of the cases that she was doing were kind of rocking specific institutions to the core, specifically economic institutions, given the cases that were kind of covered afterwards. Yeah, specifically, she spoke about that thoroughly. At some point, very weird figures were following us with their cars and stuff like that at some point, and it just speaks to how like people with power just seek to kind of undermine people's autonomies eventually, right? And you kind of fail to see any structural hierarchy that does not kind of instigate kind of this kind of sexual violence at some point, and because at this point there has not been a single power with a single institution of any kind with any specific power that you don't see some sort of structural sexual violence either to women or to children, and that is something that is undeniable. Yeah. Once and once again, if that's in the States, if that's in Egypt, everywhere. And we still don't know, because there isn't like a lot of research about that, right? Because every research about that will be shut down by the people that are in power. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to be like a conspiracy theorist here. It's just the truth, right?
Yeah. And you raised a good point, Selim, like Nadine maybe is the one that did it and then you got the praise for it, or only when you spoke up is when people heard you or believed, you know, what she was saying or whatever, right? So that is one of the things that we do struggle with, especially in the Egyptian culture, is if I don't have a man by my side vouching for me or speaking and agreeing with what I'm saying or supporting what I'm saying, it's like my voice has no value at all. A woman has no value unless she has a man speaking for her, a father, a brother, a cousin, an uncle, a husband. So yeah, I mean, I heard actually yesterday, I got a message from somebody yesterday. I wanted to read it, and then I think we have Shady that just joined us. I think Shady's with us now.
There he is.
Hey guys, how's it going? Can you hear me?
Hey,
Yeah,
Shady,
I can hear you.
Hey,
welcome.
how are you? How's it going? I'm sorry, I had an important thing and then quickly jumped in the shower so I could be human at this point. How's it going? How's everyone?
Everybody's doing great. We're happy to have you. Thank you for joining us. We're so
Oh,
excited to
thank
hear
you
you
for having
speak.
me.
We were just we heard from Buvly first in the beginning. Buvly Cost here, mental
Mhm.
health, here for mental health
Hey,
support.
how's it going?
Yeah, and then we talked to Selim a little bit, and now we want to hear from you a little bit. And you know, you and Selim join in conversation. Buvly, jump in. And if anyone has any questions or anything, raise your hand. I was gonna read real quick. A friend of mine sent me something yesterday from someone from Egypt, and it's a text message saying, they started getting outed on Facebook, and so now guys don't even look our way. Like if a guy is a known cat caller, the girls would post about him on Facebook and ifdah him and his family. So now guys are scared to talk to girls, and girls are so cold, they don't give guys the time of day. Anyway, it continues to say, like, this is actually what we've been doing for the past year and a half or so, since 2020, has been this is a girl sending this from Egypt. So I guess it's helping. I guess, you know, how do you feel? I mean, Selim, you're in Egypt, maybe you can tell us.
Honestly, Sally, like the fact that men are scared and feel like they might be accountable for their actions is amazing, right? Men should be scared to approach women because everything that they learn about their approaches to women has been indescribably false, right? What they were taught was okay is definitely not okay. And what they think is mild is still so far from okay still, right? But to say that there might have been a small dent, but that does not mean that harassment is still in any way, shape, or form lower in any way. I don't know because I'm a man, because women still face harassment on a day-to-day basis, and I hear from all my close friends that this is what they still feel. But if at some point someone shun themselves away from approaching a woman in a way that is indecent, then that is still progress, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is it's so ingrained in our society that there needs to be a lot more work to kind of pull out this humorous cancer away from our society so that we can start growing as people.
I agree. And I think it starts with the men in this room talking to us today. So thank you all. Shady, welcome, my fellow activist friend. Tell us a little bit about yourself. And again, in the beginning, we announced that we are not censoring our speakers. So speak as you want, express yourself any way you want, and we're here to hear you.
I was actually worried that there'd be young people here. Somebody messaged me and told me that they had kids, young boys, and I was worried that she'd actually bring them, since I generally have a swearing problem, especially when talking about issues like this. But yeah, so my name is Shady Noor, and I am a filmmaker based here in New York. Yeah, and I've been pretty active since I was very young. But it wasn't really in the field of sexual violence, even though I was talking about it since I was quite young. Given I was exposed, I mean, most of my closest friends are all women, and my mother has been an activist since I was very, very young, and she still is. She's a queen. I'm a open and proud mama's boy, 100%. And I don't know. I mean, like she taught my brother and I a lot of things, of how to go about, about equality in every way. Where it was just for me, like while growing up and realizing how men had more power than women, given like the patriarchal society in Egypt. That kind of structure was very, very confusing for me, given given my mother was much more powerful than even though my father is a politician, and He ran for president in 2005, and he was very much the, the center of attention. But after he was put in prison for running for president back then during the Mubarak era, she took incredible stances that no, that I mean, in Egypt they would say "Sitt b'mitrogel," where so that they could, describe a woman, a brave woman, they would have to compare her to men. "Sitt b'mitrogel," I don't know, in case anybody doesn't know Arabic here, it's like a woman worth 100 men or something. I don't know. Somebody has to translate this a little bit better, but a woman stronger than 100 men or something. No, that's the wrong one. But yeah, so basically, just so society can describe a woman as strong, they would have to compare her to men, which was just already, it was crazy when there is no man, anyways, that I know who would have a stronger stance than she did, or anyone. In fact, I would have never been able to. She took absolutely like extremely brave stances where the Mubarak regime was actually more scared of her than of my father, who was, the person who was, more famous and more well known and stuff. And that's when she got much more like as international attention and stuff. Basically, I don't want to get so much into that because it's off topic, but she seeing the patriarchal society and how that they would view men as more powerful than women, to me in general, was absolutely alien. It was fucking ridiculous. And so I never truly understood it. And while growing up as well as a teenager in Egypt, it's like they're trying to kind of force you into the system. And then sometimes you kind of just like fall into it and sorry guys, my flatmate I think has COVID and he's like coughing a lot. But anyways, while you're a teenager, I'm sure Selim, you can also relate to this. And by the way, everybody around the world really, like they try to kind of like drag you into to misogyny and to feeling like you're more powerful than women and stuff. And there was this moment like where it was kind of just like, but this doesn't make sense, guys. It just doesn't make sense. And so it was kind of like society's attempt on me. It just failed miserably. And all of my closest friends were always women. And so I always heard the most horrible and horrific stories, apart from one that I recently discovered of my mother as well, who also experienced something horrible, which she opened up about during a specific election. But it was all of the stories, and I would always have to help my friends. And these were huge eye openers, to what actually happens here in Egypt that we as privileged men don't understand, don't experience, and don't even understand, and the bare minimums to even understand. Even these are just pretty clear facts. But yeah, having to help them through so much and see what these men did to them and continue to do to them, made me really understand the predatory behavior and be able to kind of draw patterns of how they emotionally manipulate and how they gaslight and how they do everything, all of their techniques and all of in just that. So I was really, really able to build all these patterns, and this is something that I work with very, very much when catching predators and being able to help the survivors on how to have them have justice, etc., etc. It truly is about understanding how they do things, and I'm never surprised. Like till today, and Selim knows this as well. Every single time we speak, I'm never surprised. I know exactly what they do and exactly what they're doing, and it's so repetitive. And one of the issues, I think we might be speaking about it sooner or later, I don't know, but it's all the blackmail that's happening now, internet blackmail. This is a
it doesn't take much.
Every
It doesn't take
case.
much. It doesn't take much, right, Shady? It doesn't take much for a man to blackmail someone here in Egypt. It doesn't at all. It's like I'm going to Photoshop a couple of pictures. That's enough for me to have you completely under my foot.
You don't need, Selim, you don't even need to Photoshop anymore. There is AI that does it in a second, and it costs like $30 or something.
Yeah, but like doesn't even, someone could just say like, I'm going to tell your parents that we had sex, right?
Yeah, and it's done. You know, because they know the parents will destroy their daughters, and their brothers will destroy the daughters, let alone society, and let alone their friend circles, etc., etc.
Because it's not about her being a woman, right? It's about the honor of the family first, and then her as a woman, right? It's like it still reflects inwards about his stance as a man first, as the head of the family, before it reflects to how she reflects as a woman.
Yeah. It's I just want to mention is that most cases that we deal with, at least with me, the most difficult ones are the ones with blackmail. They're the most challenging ones because,
Shady, sorry, can you walk us through what that means to the people that aren't familiar with that? Like what is, you know, from the encounter of first a man and a woman meeting, and then what happens after that?
Meeting. Could you elaborate?
You're talking about like
meeting,
a predator,
a man
like
and like
the natural steps of a predator.
Right, yeah, exactly. How does it get to the point of blackmailing the victim?
The natural steps of a predator, is that the question? Or yeah. Right. Okay. I'll have to get ready for that one. The natural steps of the thing is, it's so common that you know, it happens so often with so many people, and it's hard to answer this question because I have I don't know where it is, but I have a paper, okay, of categorizing the different kinds of predators and how they actually hunt down their victims. And of course, they don't even need to hunt them down because it's on, you know, it's given to them on a plate, really, because of society. So you have you have just like the general, the general typical man who will have like a get to know a woman or just a relationship, and you know, and then he would have, you know, you would manipulate her in a way, emotionally, and of course, given, you know, we are human beings, we will get vulnerable with people who are close to us, etc. So they'd find out personal information, and so they'd find out personal information about family, personal information of, you know, the dynamic between her and her father, etc., etc. So these are all kind of, you know, big points that they'd usually have. Secrets, stuff like that, and weaknesses. We are all human beings and we all have weaknesses, but who has the privilege now to be able to use and abuse these weaknesses? Of course, only these men. So you have that style, and then so when they would, when anything would happen, and when their partner or whoever it is may want to leave this relationship or whatever it may be, that's when they would use these things, and they'd be like, oh, really? Oh, okay, well, if you don't come back to me, then you know what's going to happen. And then they wouldn't even specify first, and then later on they would specify. So, and of course, given you know, technology and the world that we live in right now, there is no, with every victim that I would have to deal with and every single case that approaches, 98% of the time, there is compromising material, and it is a given in the world that we live in, and it is their right to have to be able to exchange compromising material. This is the world we live in. You know, it's part of, you know, it's just part of it, and a lot of people find it fun, and it very much could be, you know, it's how people can, and even long distance relationships, technology make it so much easier, and then so compromising material is, it has become a natural part of society, really, and it shouldn't be compromising. It should not obviously be compromising. It should be it's just, and it should be, this is trust, and this is important things that you are supposed to not be able to touch. And of course, sadly, society, not just in Egypt, will blame the victim and say, well, why did you send him notes? And why did you send him these pictures? And why did you this? And of course, all of the blame would go to whom? To the victim, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. And this happens everywhere. This is not even just, down to Egypt, but Egypt really is, we're here to talk about Egypt. That's, the victim blaming is beyond. Of course, we already all know this. But so the whole fault suddenly goes and is directed towards the victim of why did you send him this? But then so now we have reached another level where, of course, it is her right to send him whatever the fuck she wants to begin with, but it is what it is. But if the man the predator doesn't even have compromising material, now given the technology that we have, AI, literally, you can simply, upload a person's picture or whatever, easy, just like that. And then now you have their faces on pictures. I personally believe.
We just got a message from Dina. Shout out to Dina, who's wonderful. I follow her on Twitter. She's great. She asked if there are laws in Egypt against revenge porn.
No. You do have blackmail. You do have laws against blackmail, but the thing is, victims, or generally, right now, since we're talking about the structure, in the patriarchal structure, and how, and from a legal perspective, it blocks every single route a victim can take for justice. Nothing. Not just is it family, and not just is it society. So she can't go to her family. And this is literally with 98% of all of the cases. She can't go to her family. And most of them can't even go to their friends. And even if she's able to go to her friends, if they want to go to file a police report, who's going to stand against them there? And I came in during this conversation while you were saying this. What usually happens, the police are usually the people who are going to shame the victim. Well, what were you wearing? Why were you there? This and that. And they wouldn't do it as in, why were you there for me to, write the police report and try to figure out. And what we do is try to figure out the storyline so we can avoid any sort of technique or tactics, so we can be 2 steps ahead of the predator. I want to know, like with every case, I want to know, what is he going to do next? So right now, she's going to file a report, and this is, to be honest, this is the direct. This is what we know. This is a system, and this is, you go and then you go to the police and then you file a police report, etc., etc. But what lawyers don't actually do, I'm sorry if anybody here is a lawyer, but it is what it is that they cannot manage blackmail. Because right now you have a victim who's going to go report, okay? That's 1 + 1 = 2. Of course, still society is going to stand in the way, family and friends and everything. We already talked about that. We already know this. But there is a huge, and I call it, what do I call it? 1 second. No man's land is what I call it. Between the victim first wanting to report and the predator being jailed, if he even is jailed to begin with. The lawyers will take you through the process of, I'm going to help you. We're going to do, all the papers. We're going to file the report, and from the report they go on, the lawyers, etc. But what happens through this entire period, which is the majority, of the dangers? Number one, what is the predator going to do? Where are the threats going to come from? What about blackmail? What does he have? What can he do? Where is he going to go? Is he going to go to the family? What does he have? What are his, and these are questions that sadly, after becoming, building a bond of trust with the victim, these are the things that I would have to understand as well and go through, is that number one, who is the guy? Who are his friends? who is he within his social circles? Is he the kind of, is he, because I want to understand what kind of predator as well, going back to the conversation that we were having early. Who is he within these friend circles? What is his dynamic? Is he like the one, the alpha bullshit that bro kind of that guy? Or is he the one who's kind of on the side, who has a lot of compensating to do? Who is he there? Who are his family? Who is his father? What's his job? What's their socio? Of course, that's like the 1 + 1 = 2. That's like the 101. I mean, like where his socioeconomic class. What connections does he have? Father, uncle, whom exactly? Is anybody dead? Where are they? We need to really understand the entire pictures, where I would have like a good like five big pages of notes of how to really be able to connect the dots and who's who and where the danger is going to come from. Lawyers won't do this, and this is where people like Selim and I would have to come in. Not just Selim and I, we're talking the entire activist group in Egypt, is that getting that no man's land. This is to me the dangerous point, and this is to me where I would be on call all the time. Anything can happen any second. I want to know, who's he speaking to at this point? Who can he speak to? Where is the, where are the attacks going to come from? I need to understand what this individual is like. What powers does he have, and what does he have on her, be it real or fabricated or whatever? I want to know when he goes to the police station, what's he going to say? Is he going to say that there's a detail that I can't say right now because one of something sensitive just an hour ago. What excuse is he gonna give? Of course, they all go and be like, oh, hey, Sharmuta, she is a slut. She is a prostitute. She does this for money. She does this for, and one other one, which is important that I can't mention right now, maybe in a couple of days, hopefully. Stuff like that. I want to know what they're going to say the second they reach court, and this is the stuff lawyers don't do, and this is the stuff here in 2022 that they will not teach in law school. The lawyers would say this, and by the way, I love the lawyers who I work with, love them to death. But what they will always say is, Shady, and they would speak to the victim as well, don't worry, the predators will never do anything, because if they do, they're going to get a much more severe prison sentence. And then so I would have to respond to the lawyers, and I would say, who cares? Who cares about the prison sentence? He's going to go into prison and he's going to come out. But if he does, post, compromising pictures, who is really going to die? And sadly, I'm not even saying this as a metaphor anyway. Who is really going to be hurt? That piece of shit is going to go into prison, and God knows if he has connections or whatever. Is he going to be eating McDonald's inside, as we know of other predators? Or is he going to go in 2, 3 years, 5 years, 6, 10 years? He's going to come out. He's going to be able to survive. But if he releases compromising material on her, regardless how many years, her life is in danger. And then so I truly wish lawyers would be able to look at this, and the police and the system would be able to look at this from a modern day perspective, that the dangers are different. This is not blackmail. We need new terms to be created when it comes to predators who use compromising material. Blackmail is a bit, and they need a different name. They need a worse name, because this is, to be honest, in my eyes, the most dangerous thing that we're dealing with right now. But there is a very fucked up thing that I'm going to have to say, which is kind of like a positive note. It is a positive note, but this is very, very dark, I must say. Given the how famous, not famous, what is the word I'm looking for? How common fake fake nudes and blackmail is becoming, people are going to become more and more aware of it. And one day, it's going to get worse. More people are going to be more aware of it. Therefore, more predators are going to use it. But the more and more it becomes well known, it's one day going to hit a saturation point where people and society are going to most look at pictures and doubt them already because of how prevalent fake nudes and fake blackmail is. But we're talking, this is going to be good fucking like 8-9 years, maybe, if my estimations is right. It's very, very dark what I'm saying, but I do think that saturation point is going to hit, but that absolutely does not change the fact that this is in my eyes, the most dangerous thing that is within every single case. And not just by, I think the highest number of cases of internet blackmail is actually in Pakistan. And I've been speaking to an organization yesterday, which we are organizing Selim, I want to talk to you about this later. A huge campaign with regards to this. And the organization is based, it's called Avaz. I don't know how you pronounce it. I don't know if he's actually here. He may be here. Where they're based in, they're a Canadian company, and they're that specific section or whatever, they're based in Pakistan because apparently it is horrible in Pakistan. So we're going to get somewhere. We're going to get somewhere, and I am hopeful, but how many people are going to fall in the process? And sadly, how many people are going to actually die in the process and take their lives in the process? I'm sorry I took so much of your time.
Let's take a second to kind of answer some of these messages. Some of these.
I'm so sorry, guys, but this is I've been dealing with this just like 1 hour ago, and so I'm very, very,
Real quick before we get to the questions, Shady, I can see you're emotional because something just happened. I don't think most people, or maybe some people don't know, you pretty much deal with these cases all the time, right? Are you working with other organizations? Do you have victims that reach out? How do you get into these cases?
Okay, firstly, I do not work with organizations. I may help. I can work on a campaign or help them with a campaign, etc. This is the first time that I'm actually, but organizations are full of bureaucracy and full of rules and regulations. Sorry, I'm gonna get into trouble for saying this shit, but so many limits, and they're very, very slow, and the bureaucracy is absolutely disgusting. And this is why we work independently. And not just, this is why victims approach us, so that answers your question. Victims approach us for help, because in Egypt, the institutions aren't going to help, and they're terrifying for them. Everybody has seen what happened in the Fairmont. Everybody has seen what happened to the TikTokers, and everybody's seen what happened to so many other cases where the victim goes and reports, and suddenly the victims are the ones being put in jail with the predators, sometimes even in the same fucking cell. So they would reach out to independent activists like us because we fill the gap. Sorry, we fill the gap. There's a big void there, and we fill it. And this is not our job, but this is something that we do. Yeah, so to answer your question, we are reached out by DMs, and it comes in phases. Sometimes, literally, it can go for a good 2 weeks with absolutely no cases. And then suddenly 3 days of 3-4 cases right after each other. And this is what happened 5 days ago. Yeah. 3 cases, boom, after each other. Not after each other. 2 same day, with a 5-minute gap, literally, of 2 long phone calls. Wow. And it's difficult and it's sad, but of course it's much there is no comparison of difficulty between what they go through and us trying to help, or
yeah. And that's pretty much, I think, how it's been going with Coptic Survivor and myself as well. And I think that's how we pretty much connected, is through the campaigns that we had on social media, right? So yeah, we'll just continue doing our work together. I'm happy to be able to join the fight with you all, and that you all are here to support Coptic Survivor as well. Salim, did you want to, you said that we had some questions in the chat.
There are some questions. I just want to, are there revenge porn laws? Yes, but with an asterisk. It's the same thing with the States, you know, like, can you get an abortion in the States? Yes, but with an asterisk. Kind of the same thing. That's just to kind of to answer that very, very quickly. Are there any police units for victims in Egypt or general police? Are there any police units specifically done for this specific thing? No, I mean, there's like a very kind of broad sense internet police. They kind of deal with like kind of blackmail and revenge porn and stuff. Various degrees of success there. There's the National Council of Women that kind of deals with kind of cases for women. Again, various degrees of success. We don't need to get into that, Shady. I know you have a lot to say about that. Let me see what else. Someone is asking what was the name of the organization in Canada. Shady, you mentioned an organization. AVAAZ. Okay.
AVAAZ, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
And then we have a very good question. How do you manage your own mental health to keep going? That's a very good question, because someone like Shady just doesn't. He just doesn't. He just keeps going, right? And
I have a therapist.
Yeah, no, I have a therapist too, and actually I was trying to do a thing where we can get group therapy to admins of AP, and they actually told me to kind of bring Shady along and some of these independent activists along as well, because they thought that all these people need to kind of talk about their experiences together, because they're shared experiences and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there is no shame in therapy, right? And men kind of, to a large degree in Egypt, kind of shy away from therapy, like I don't need to talk about my emotions, I'm a strong person, right? Which is bullshit, right? That's just untrue. Specifically, waking up at 3 a.m, checking like your DMs, and someone's telling you like a trigger warning, but they're going to kill themselves just because someone is threatening, and things like that. And that was daily for me until I kind of took a break and to do something like that. And I was burnt out. And you kind of internalize some of these things because you need to think like some of these predators. So you start thinking to yourself, am I a predator? Right? Because you kind of think to yourself, like, what am I going to do? Because I'm so knee deep in this filth that I don't know where I end and where the other person begins, because you're trying so hard to kind of help someone or be in that person's case, to kind of think 2 or 3 steps ahead. And that kind of puts you in a devastating mental space, right? Even worse than that is when you kind of are exposed to a specific amount of trauma, you kind of start getting secondhand trauma out of these experiences, nightmares, night shivers, kind of all these things, right, that you kind of experience day in, day out. Other than that which is in my opinion the worst part, is you start being desensitized to the violence, and you're not in a space or at all to kind of be desensitized to these things. So you're listening to someone say very, very, very deeply hurtful things to their own experiences. But when you get 100 messages a day and you just do not have the ability or the legwork or anything to kind of the assets or the money or be able to, or the volunteers to kind of be able to kind of help any of these. So a lot of these, so you're just have your earth down to the ground, and you're hearing incredibly painful screams, incredibly painful, and there's nothing for you to do about it, because well, you want to start an NGO, right? Well, you can't, right? Just legally, you just can't, right? Maybe start funding, right? Well, no, you can't get funding, because what if you get money from outside Egypt? Well, that's a criminal offense, right? You're being funded from an outside state. And that happened to kind of the main lawyer that helped us spearhead some of these cases, Azza Suleiman, was dealing with prison for a very long time because she was getting funds from outside states, right? So what do you do?
That's his name, I'm sorry.
Sorry?
Can I add to that point for a sec?
Of course.
Nearly every single human rights organization in Egypt has been banned from working. That's number one. Nearly every single human rights lawyer of any, who is known, is banned from traveling. I think there are about 100 and something organizations, yes, that have been, no, 1 second, I can't bullshit the number, I'm sorry. But yeah, nearly every single, yes, human rights organization that is not directly affiliated with the government, and of course censored and, all of that, directed, they're all banned from functioning, and they're all, many of them, of course, the people were simply thrown in prison. And regarding the foreign funding, you are allowed foreign funding, but you will get screwed for it, and they will fuck you over for it, and they will call you a foreign agent. And this is where things get very, very fucked up in Egypt, when people call you a foreign agent. And this is something that I was accused of back during the Fairmont case.
One of the things that you were accused of.
One of the things I was accused of, yes.
Shady,
that was the one time where I really, really, really needed therapy. And then I was about to, one therapist was about, because I'm too broke, I was about to, one therapist was going to, and then it fucked up, because she was free in the morning in Egypt, and in the morning in Egypt, it was way, way too late at night for me in New York, and so it completely fucked up.
Right, like you sleep. Sleep at all.
It was the Fairmont. We all know, like, you know what happened to me to the Fairmont. It was absolutely
no, we don't talk about the Fairmont. That's literally how I start any of these talks, that whenever anyone asks me, I'm like, we're not gonna talk about the Fairmont.
Can we talk about the Fairmont just for 1 second? The Fairmont, for those who don't know, there's the Fairmont Hotel in Cairo, right? And there was a gang rape there. And it was just, isn't that pretty much what sparked the movement a couple of years ago?
No.
There was a case before that, ABZ, Zakhari, in prison now for nearly 11 years, something ridiculously low for someone who assaulted almost 100 women. Something incredibly low, minuscule. But I just kind of want to go back to the main topic of toxic masculinity and stuff like that. I just want to say that when Shady and I first met, we did not trust each other, because that's natural, right? And I think we should talk about that, Shady, because right now we're best buds, right? I consider him like an older brother. But in the beginning, because usually we're just deeply mistrusting of other men. And that's just how we kind of operated, because I barely trust myself. How am I going to trust another man and his intentions, right? And that's something that him and I have talked about profusely, because that's just how we're raised. Like, why are you doing this? What are your intentions? I have not met a man who does this kind of stuff without kind of some ill intent in the back of his head. And we had to kind of work through that and kind of reach kind of a mutual agreement. And that might have been kind of from like some sort of internalized toxic kind of alpha traits or anything. I'm not in a place to kind of analyze that. But Shady, you can say your opinion about that. But I think
we just need to mention that Selim and I never met in real life. During the ABZ case, the case that very, very much sparked the recent movement, Selim and I, through the incredible whistleblower who her and I first spoke, and this is when she decided she's going to take things through the legal route. I brought them all into this this application called Wire, which is a encrypted app. It's like Signal, but it's more, And this is when, so I had the group, and I had the whistleblower, who is Selim's very, 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 very close friend, and she became an incredibly close friend to me as well. Dear, dear, dear person. I made a group between her and another friend of hers who was going to help, and then we brought in one more person, and then Selim popped in, and I was like, who is this dude? And then I was like, what is this? I don't trust no man. And then Selim has a very, very deep voice. And I never even, saw him. And I was like, all right, no, and this is where this is. So it definitely was a mistrust, between us and this, and yeah, and you have a very, very strong energy as well, Yaslim, and you are very, very passionate. So, on the phone, I was just like, well, this is, and then so I despised it even in the beginning until it took such little time for the whistleblower to make us love each other. Seriously.
Yeah.
Wow.
It took one tiny phone call to be like, Shady, Selim, I just want to let you guys know, you guys are both filmmakers. And then I'm like, wait a minute, really? He's like, yeah. Oh, really? You're a film? Oh, it was so natural. We clicked so fast after 3 days of 4 days even of tension. It was very, very, very interesting how that never happened where in my life where somebody was able to kind of just bond me with a man so quickly after such bad tension. It was really funny, but yeah.
I want to, that's awesome. I mean, we're going into after an hour now, so I just want to shift the conversation a little bit to what does positive masculinity look like? I wanted to invite Bubbly back into the conversation with us. And also we have my good friend Jamal Weeks here. I wanted him to also chime in on the positive masculinity part of this talk before we end. Are you here, Jamal?
Hello, everybody. Yes, Sally, I'm here.
Hey, how's it going?
Intro.
Hey,
Jamal Weeks. Good to see you guys. I just spoke with Shady and Selim, I believe, on the call recently. But Sally, I didn't want to stop the intro. You can continue with the intro that you had.
Oh, thank you. I mean, you can introduce yourself. I was just going to say, I mean, yeah, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about you before you jump in.
Yeah, I can do a little bit. I'm not good at that part. I'm Jamal Weeks. I played professional baseball for quite a few years, for about 12 years. I came up in the church, grew up in a denomination called Church of God in Christ, Christian. Pentecostal was the denomination. Went to high school in the Orlando area. Also went to school with Sally at that time. Went to college at University of Miami. I do have 2 little girls that both play softball, close in age. They're both in middle school right now. And they're kind of like the apple of my eye, I could say. And I want to also say that just listening to some of the conversation I was able to hear just now, I know that this is a topic that needs to get out to the world. It needs to get out to those that are a little bit ignorant of the facts, because what's happening with toxic masculinity, from what I'm hearing, and then also what's happening outside of the U.S. borders, which is actually different, that you can't receive certain funds, that you can't receive. You guys are regulated in a different way than we're regulated here. So it's really enlightening. It's great information. And I just speak from the side of the line of work that I'm in now. After I had a seizure 3 years ago, I wasn't able to play anymore. I continued my lineage of my family's work and was kind of led by God to start an organization called We Fam United. And within that organization, we seek to change the narrative of underserved youth and their communities. And with that, right now, our biggest project is we are starting a baseball and softball program that deals with nonviolence life skills, where we have added a healthy feeding program, a tutoring school, and we have transportation for the kids and the families that can't afford to get their kids to the program. But to add to that, and what impacts this meeting the most, is the fact that we also run what you call a father's initiative. And within that father's initiative, we remove barriers for fathers and encourage healthy relationships with their kids, their families, and their communities. So from the positive masculinity side, we meet every Tuesday at 7:15 p.m. and we discuss things that kind of hamper our communities, and the obesities, the abuse, verbal abuse, bullying, the abuse that kids deal with as far as teen pregnancies, the different things that we spoke about with the body and the behavioral and the moral issues. We deal with all of those, and we come to find out that fatherhood is actually at the basis and the foundation of the development of most communities, most neighborhoods, and those things that kind of stand and have a foundational setting. And how we base our studies and what we do is one, off data, but two, understanding the biblical reference that God is the Father. So I'll start right there, Sally, and kind of leave it open for the other partner that you had that was on here. But I'm just glad to be here and thankful for everybody that's listening and the information I've been able to receive.
Thank you, Jamal. That's awesome. So yeah, big things in the community here, and I've been watching the work that he's been doing, and it's amazing. He's, I mean, really changing the narrative, really making a lot of positive change in these families, from children all the way to their parents, and having fathers that are present there for their children, and raising them in a positive light. That is not the issue that we've been having in the past, is this toxic masculinity, right? So do you want to share, Jamal, a little bit about, after hearing this conversation, how you feel as a father to two girls?
Yeah, I can share on that. Being a father to two girls, it's really, and they spoke on it, right? There's a masculine side that society pushes upon us as men. And so now when you're growing up, you have to stand up to that masculine idea or that masculine image, that once you stand up to that image, it kind of pushes toxicity, which is what we're talking about. And that toxicity, maybe in my development of training my kids or helping my kids or teaching them, it can cause me to be rough in areas I shouldn't be as rough. It can cause me to yell or be more forceful in an area that is actually a learning opportunity, but now they can't learn because I wasn't able to take down the guard of what society said I have to be as a father and as a man at all times. Then not only that, dealing with men inside your family or friends that are men, like the two gentlemen said, they had never met each other. The first thing that comes across is, I don't know you, so I don't really have open respect right away. I have to now learn you to get to know you, to now open up the door for a mutual conversation. And that should not be. But that can seep into our fatherhood, where we have to sit there and we come across with our societal views towards our kids. And that causes us to have a distance between our kids. And now the cycle of toxic masculinity is actually passed on generationally at this point. And it causes the kids to operate the same way. Now little girls look for young men that they tend to date later in life, and they expect the toxic masculinity as their norm. So now the problem continues and it grows, and it becomes something that is more of an epidemic than it is a topic of conversation.
Yeah, all very excellent points. Thank you so much, Jamal. You're absolutely right about that.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Buvley, did you want to chime in?
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, Selim and Shady, thank you for, sharing your stories and experiences. I mean, I can't even begin to fathom, the things that, you guys hear and go through. So, just keep it up. We need more people like you. So, don't lose hope or faith. So, keep doing what you're doing. And Jamal, thank you for sharing your experience, especially being, a father to two girls. One thing I would add too, from what I shared early on, is a big thing. So before I became a therapist, I was an educator before. So when I look at big systems, one of the things that, especially when it comes to positive masculinity, is education, right? So how are we educating, our children and people within the church community as well, if we're looking within, or any religious organization for that matter, right? Education is going to be very key to how we raise children to, understand the different roles that we have, right? And Jamal kind of spoke about that, right, with his own experience within his family, right, and how, that you pick up certain aspects and then you go with it, right? The term you hear is locker room talk, right, for men when it comes to, if we're talking like sports references, right? And so education is going to be very important, I would say, in changing the narrative as well too, right? So yeah, we might be able to get to 1 to 2 people, which is amazing, right? But how do we get to the bigger community at large, right? And that's continuing to educate people and showing them the importance, as Jamal was saying, the importance of fatherhood, right? Fathers are very much important, just as mothers are, and working together to understand our needs in order to raise our kids in a way that will respect, both genders, right? And that for me, I would say, is the one thing, just education, right? And that's how we tackle it, and we continue to, put that down. And so forums like this and others are important to have, and important to make sure that everyone's voice is heard in that. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Bavli. Do you guys have anything else to add, Selim and Shady, or does anyone have any questions? Can you just raise your hand or type your questions in the chat before we end?
I could
Yeah, go ahead.
very briefly talk about a very specific case that I kind of investigated independently, and then we kind of put it on AP. But I was involved in a kind of in the university years, in my university years before I graduated. I was kind of pulled into kind of this group of mostly men, but some of them were women. It was kind of a camp thing, right? Kind of like a political thing in regards to kind of political power in regards to the university and stuff. And they kind of brought me in because they were kind of talking about policies that will kind of protect student rights and stuff. And given the 2 alternatives, one camp did not allow women at all, and it was kind of super hyper masculine, and the other one kind of had a specific element of hyper masculinity to it, but they also kind of had a specific amount of women involved. So I was like, okay, well, and I kind of knew the guy that was running, and they kind of brought me involved to kind of handle their campaign and to kind of film stuff and stuff like that. So I was kind of brought in as a campaign manager, and I was kind of sucked into kind of that world, right? And I was never ever in all of my life was I ever kind of welcomed as kind of a part of a brotherhood in any way, shape, or form. I was kind of like this arts guy who kind of read his comic books and kind of listened to his girly music and peace, and bullied for that in high school. But at that point, they kind of brought me in, and they kind of had a lot of respect for me, and I was so intrigued by that. And then slowly they kind of told me, well, hey, watch out, that other camp has a kind of a WhatsApp group where they kind of non-consensually share their ex's nudes on it to their comrades and stuff like that. And I was like, holy shit, that's so fucked, right? Like, let's investigate that. Let's kind of use that to kind of like completely destroy their pedestal that they're on. And then slowly, as I kind of started investigating it, I realized that they also have a group where they leak women's nudes on it in a kind of revenge porn style. And I started investigating that and everyone all of a sudden locked up and kind of shunned me away, right? When they were trying to kind of get me on their side, right? When it was just men talking. But then when they realized that, no, that's a man who's actually that's telling us this is okay, that this is abnormal, we're going to shun him away and kind of gaslight the crap out of that. And then I started investigating and kind of pushing forward until some men started to crack. When you kind of take a man away from the rest of the kind of groupthink, that's when you can kind of start making him feel any sort of remorse, right? And that's what I started realizing, that when it's groupthink, they kind of think that, well, the accountability is divided tenfold. Well, when you hold a man away from all of that and you hold him accountable for all of that, that's when finally he starts feeling like, well, maybe he should be feeling guilt. Maybe he should be feeling remorse. And I did that, and turns out there were that group was operating for almost 10 years with thousands and thousands of pictures, and I kind of ousted them all kind of to the university, and they got penalized ridiculously small penalizations from the university. A lot of them had graduated, but it was very heartbreaking to realize that some of these people that you considered, that you had some sort of camaraderie with them, that kind of, even some of them were VPs in women's rights group on campus, that were involved in kind of hiding like this ridiculous group, like, or sex ring, or whatever you want to call it. And these people still kind of let other people go unaccounted for because of this, quote unquote, as Bavli said, locker room talk, right? Well, we're just gonna let them have this. And it was honestly super disheartening to see that happen. And but I guess it just takes just one conversation, and you gotta take one man away from the kind of groupthink to get them to kind of think back and kind of reach some sort of internal kind of serenity with the fact that this is just not okay, and they should not be kind of doing that kind of stuff.
Wow. Thank you, Selim. We have a few questions for you guys, it looks like. Someone is asking, after a case has been reported to you guys, what steps do you take then? What's the investigation process? What's the action plan?
Shady?
So I kind of spoke about that earlier. I spoke a lot about that earlier. But the process, of course, is for me is understanding who is the predator, and understanding every single thing about him, asking like every single question that you guys would probably be like, why the fuck, like, would you want to know that about an individual? And understanding as well, you remember I mentioned something to do with who is he in his group. And this is a very, very important part. And it, of course, comes down to our conversation about toxic masculinity. And they always tend to kind of, fit in with this bro group. But it depends, who are they within this bro group? Because the toxic masculinity, it will live, it rots inside these groups regardless. But yeah, it's understanding every single thing about this individual, understanding, of course, understanding the case, understanding with the crime, and sadly, understanding if they are comfortable sharing, which most of the time they are, the details of what exactly happened, because it really depends as well. Depends on 100 things, of course, but with me, it's mostly where the danger is coming from, because I will connect them to a lawyer, for sure. And Selim, I was just with Azza Suleiman on the phone, literally like a minute before I had to jump in the shower to get on here. She's amazing. Azza is a lawyer who I, with every case to do with sexual violence or every case to do with women in general, I would connect the victims to Azza or Ahmed Raghib, who is the individual who was very, very much leading the case with the whistleblower of the Ahmed Bassem Zaki case. And after that, it's quite strange, but the lawyers would speak to me about all of the problems. As if it is weird, and sometimes it kind of blows me away, as if the lawyers need me there. And I'm sure, Selim, you probably felt that same way, is that the lawyers, they really need us there. But after them dealing with having the lawyer on board, that's all of the paperwork, that's all of the process, and the just the legal process in general, which I know very, very basic shit about, tiny bit more than basic. But during the Ahmed Bassem Zaki case, I think we all learned so much about the law within just 12 days. Selim, I think you made a joke about that long ago. But yeah, and from there, this is where I personally would be the damage control, but not really just the damage control. It's actually finding the evidence. because of course we all know most cases, you know, how on earth are you going to get evidence of a assault that happened in a room in, you know? So it becomes very, very challenging, and all of the details as well, because right when we reach out to a lawyer, I like to kind of make it so easy for the lawyer to, you know, be able to move very, very quickly. And finding the evidence can sometimes be quite challenging, where, for example, like proving that she was there, for example. One victim one time actually drew a drawing while she was there of the house, because she was a painter and or an artist, and he was a painter, and he was supposed to be training her. Of course, that's how you know, lots of predators you know, do it. Ahmed Bassem Zaki's case in specific as well. They would lure in the victims in a way of, oh, I need your help with this, or I want to teach you this or that, and you know, of course, they would abuse their power, be it wherever they are. You know, we all know as well, you know, people abusing their jobs and the power dynamic in general. Selim, you talked about power dynamic a lot before, with regards to age and jobs and stuff. But yeah, she, for example, drew a picture of the house with the curtains and the chairs and stuff. And if he ever tries to say that she was never there, it's bullshit. You know, she drew it and she even signed her name on it. And so she didn't know that this could be, you know, held as evidence against the guy. And so it really, really canceled out the accusation that she was never there. It's stuff like that. And not just, also the dates and times of the Uber that she ordered that was never able to come because of her phone died. So she had to call a friend of hers who actually took a screenshot of the Uber history that was on his bank stuff. And it's, you know, it's, you really, really need to kind of, you know, find all of these things. And it's very, very time sensitive as well. And so you kind of get all of these things and you kind of give them to the lawyer, finding the evidence. It's always, given the fact that, you know, in Egypt, the concept of evidence is a must. You know, it's, of course, evidence matters more than, you know, more than most things. But evidence is definitely one of the most challenging cases. But after managing the entire evidence process, it's how to keep the victims safe. So that's very, very much the process, how to keep them safe until the men are arrested. And even after arrested, I would have to be in contact with them on, you know, on like a monthly basis or whatever, to kind of check up on them and check up on, you know, who's saying what, what's going on. I'm worried. I'm always worried. What if they get a friend of theirs to leak something? And, you know, what's the Egyptian government going to do? You know, how are they going to locate and tell who's the person who uploaded this or whatnot? It's fucking difficult. No, not for me. It's a fucking difficult situation for them. And yeah, so the process, to answer the question, I hope like I kind of made it as simple as possible, kind of what is the
Shady, you're describing pretty much the same exact thing that I've encountered since Coptic Survivor, because all I did was post and expose, and then I didn't even realize what was going to happen, and started a movement, and I just happened to have decades of evidence with me that I didn't even ever think that I would need or use, and it all came in handy. And that's the only reason I think why my case really worked to get, you know, so far since the movement started in July 2020, my abuser has been the only one that's been removed from priesthood, and we still have so many. I have a question here kind of leading up to that. Someone's asking, how do all the processes in Egypt impact and influence dealing with cases of Coptic survivors around the world and in Egypt? How can we apply all this in a global way? So I know you guys have been involved in some of the, like, I know that you were involved in like the Michael Fahmy campaign. And so Assault Police was, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's not a case that I worked on personally.
Okay.
But I think so.
It was mostly.
You guys have heard. I'm sorry.
it was mostly Speak Up, which is
Oh, okay.
a page
Yeah, that makes more
that
sense.
came
Yeah.
after, and she told me all the details of how she managed that. I can tell you lots of things after, Sally, but because it's a long
Yeah.
thing. It's very, very detailed,
I
very-
think Sally, there was also a question about how can someone individual help with these cases. I think it really starts with our own circles, because I have a strong stance about this, is that I don't think anyone should aim farther than their own circles, because none of us are properly trained to be dealing with this, and there should be a better kind of web and link that kind of links the survivors with first responders that are therapists that are equipped to deal with that, and have that in knowledge to kind of do that. And I think that the reason why me or Shady or any of the brilliant women, be it Zain Amr or Nadine Ashraf or Sabah Khudir, or a lot of these women are put in a situation just because kind of there was a gun to our head, right? Where someone had to do something, right? That thing, in my opinion, wasn't the most ethical thing, right? Just because we do not have the training to kind of do that, right? Everyone there was just a person that just was in a specific place in a specific time that felt that they needed to act up, right? And thankfully that resulted to a specific amount of good. The bad can't honestly be kind of consolidated, and I can't give you the numbers, and I can give you a tally of was it that good versus that bad, right? Because we weren't given a proper ability to kind of like form proper channels. That's kind of where I stand, right? But also in the same time, and Shady, I don't think we should shy away from talking about this, is that a lot of the times uh, sometimes these cases are not black and white, right? I mean, they're black and white for us because we can understand how someone can give consent to someone and then take it back, right? When they feel uncomfortable later on, right? Someone could have survivor's guilt, or someone could feel like they're led on by someone who has more power than them. And some of these more, what you'd call them, more nuanced takes on kind of consent still don't exist here, right? It's like 1 + 1 = 2, right? Show me someone who is not in any way kind of like performing their own like God-given right to be sexual, or versus someone else's just clear predatory behavior, right? The fact that they're friends, well, that doesn't cut it, right? The fact that she was kind of being nice to him, well, that doesn't cut it. We need 1 + 1 = 2 for us to have a smooth sailing case. And that is just not how it usually is. That's just not how it usually is. And that kind of leads to victim blaming and leads to a lot of more disastrous things that leads on to that. That might make a case go from one point, right, where someone thinks, well, I've seen all these brilliant women come forward, then to feel absolutely terrible about their own autonomy, because people, it's so easy to kind of dehumanize someone on the internet. That's not a real person. That's just a picture of someone.
You know, it's crazy. Right? As soon as someone, you know, like a survivor comes out or wants to say a story, and it's like the first thing people shout, and especially from the Egyptian communities, is, well, where's the evidence? Show me the evidence. The percentage, the statistics of people making this up, nobody wants to say, I'm a rape victim. Nobody wants to say, hey, this happened to me, and put out all of their entire personal, I mean, very intimate, traumatic details out like that. People just don't make that stuff up. So
I think, yeah, the last statistic on that was 1 in 1,000 was a false allegation, something like incredibly ridiculous, like 0.001%.
Yeah, and it's very easy to find that very small percentage, because there is usually, there's, like you said, Shady, like you kind of have to, there is evidence there. It may not be, you know, an exact, you know, sorry, as a survivor, I didn't have time to set up my tripod video camera to catch the assault happening to me, but there is always evidence there. It's just, it just needs to be uncovered. Whether it's circumstantial or, you know, but it's just insane to me that we live in that society where it's like, as soon as a victim wants to say something or decides, which takes an insane amount of courage to even take that decision to speak out. And it's a decision that could take decades and it could even never happen at all. And this survivor lives with it forever silently. But when they do go through all that work and effort to come out, and the first thing that we shout at them is, where's your evidence? What kind of, how can we ever make progress? And this is a big thing that has happened in the Coptic survivor movement, because it's so unfathomable to people that there's no way a priest or a holy man can possibly do this, or a sheikh or any religious figure could possibly do this. So there's already so much doubt in the victim. So do you guys see, when it comes to religious abuse in Egypt, or whether it's in the States, but mostly in Egypt, I guess, since we are talking about Coptic survivors specifically, and right now, do you think that there's what are the barriers, or do you think that it's a little bit of a different issue when it's a religious organization that has abused? Do you think that the law enforcement or government acts a little bit differently when it's a religious entity that is the abuser?
A religious entity is a political entity. That's kind of what we kind of need to look at it from that point of view, right? When you build a mosque, you build a church, right? Well, you're attacking a priest. Well, where's the sheikh, right? People don't want to think that there is disparity in regards to that, but a lot of attacks, a lot of religious-based attacks happen specifically towards Christians in Egypt. And that's something that we kind of no. أنا وأخويا المسيحي واحد, right? We're all one, right? But that, when you kind of look into that and you delve deeper into that society, right? Well, you're a Christian, right? Well, some people have a specific inclination to think that, Christian women are just more open, right? That's just going to make them think that her saying that she got assaulted just means less. Right, you kind of have to kind of analyze kind of with an open lens these very, very hurtful things and these very, very hurtful stereotypes that people have about these people.
Yeah.
And it's just awful, right? It's so easy to kind of be judgmental about people's lives, and then that's the thing, right? When someone comes forward and kind of calls someone out that is kind of is a very important part of their faith. While you're shaking something that's a lot more core to a lot of people's lives, right? You're just not shaking some man who is a patriarch. You're shaking someone who for me is a symbol of my faith to my God, which is something very difficult.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I mention something that's I don't know if it would be considered off topic, but it's a very, very difficult thing to talk about. One of the most difficult cases, and this is from a very, very ethical and from a very, very strategic point, but it's not strategic. It's when you're thinking on the long run. We've been in trouble before on a ethical basis, a couple of issues. This is going to be a bit difficult to explain, and I really don't want anybody to take this no, I don't think anybody would take an offense, but when a predator is from a minority or a specific group of people that are already, such as the LGBTQ, who are already dealing with a lot, or society already shuns them, or they are basically open wounds, I call them. I'm going to talk about LGBTQ, but of course the Christian community in Egypt, the Coptic community in Egypt, are already going through hell from society. Like Selim mentioned, you have people who say, we're all one and this and that, but the reality is the reality, where the crimes are the crimes, and crimes against hate crimes and stuff. But it gets very, very difficult when a case, an assault case comes from a minority group or a group who is already, there's prejudice against them. There was, so it's very, very difficult when it comes to cases like this, because it's very ugly. I think where you would have to go for someone who symbolizes a community who is already, society already has an issue with, or they are already suffering in society. We had a case of a doctor, a gay doctor, who was a predator, and he was a big hardcore predator. But given the fact that he was gay, nobody asked for evidence. They were an open wound. In a second, he was arrested. And in a second, the entire country was against him. He was the dentist. What's his name? My father had a fucked up experience with him as well, actually. But thank God it was very, he was a dentist. He was arrested instantly. Basically, he's from a community that is an open wound already. And it got very, very ugly. The fact that, it hurt the community, innocent people in the community, more because of this individual. There was another designer, a fashion designer, who was called out for his predatory behavior as well. His name was Kojak. I don't care, I'm gonna say whoever predator's names today, I don't care. But Kojak was a predator, and he was called out by an individual who, it's tricky. It's tricky because him being this one going viral would not just affect this piece of shit. It would affect the Egypt's impression on the gay community, and it could actually lead to a crackdown on the gay community, which is what basically happened with two individuals right after Kojak was exposed. And all of my gay friends, I told them all, guys, everybody clear out your phones, everything, in case that there is actually a crackdown on the gay community, like they did back during the Queen Boat incident in 2006, or I can't recall the dates exactly. Somebody has to correct me, but yeah, the Queen Boat incident where they arrested about 50 gay men, and it was a huge, huge fuck up. So that's, do you guys get what I mean and the difficulties of that? Yeah. This conversation is tricky. I know this topic, but I'm just literally expressing something that me and a couple of activists have every single time a person is called out who is already within a group or a religious group that are dealing with the prejudice from society.
Yeah.
So it's difficult dealing with it.
Sorry, to just go back to the main point, I agree with everything Shady said, but specific minorities do have a specific, there's a specific way in which the power struggle there is you're still attacking kind of the face of someone who is spearheading a vocal minority, right?
Mm.
So which means that there is a huge amount of support that has to be well, don't call this person out because that's a bad reflection towards us as a whole, right? Which goes back to groupthink.
Right.
Right.
With the Coptic church, I was blamed for, this is what survivors here, Coptic survivors, is, do you want the church to get hurt? Because if you say this, then they're going to hurt our church. Well, the blood of the churches in Copts in Egypt is going to be on your hands. And so, and even when we started campaigning, and at the time that I met you guys, and we were on Clubhouse a lot, and we were talking to all these political figures in Egypt, and actually, reaching people that I never thought I could be able to reach from America. I'm talking to government officials and officials in law enforcement. And, I'm questioning everybody. Why can't you take action against the Coptic church? And all of them would just say, oh, no, not the Pope. We cannot touch Pope Tawadros. We can never touch the Coptic church. Y'all deal with whatever you got going on in your church. We can't get involved. And so you're just going to allow Coptic criminals just because they're Coptic, because you don't want to stir up any drama with the church.
Mhm.
You know, so that I was just shocked when I heard that, because yeah, the church is persecuted, but at the same time, they're not willing to take action against the actual criminals of the Coptic church.
Yeah.
So, Bovli, do you have anything to add about that? Because I know in the beginning you got involved in the movement and you wrote a really great article actually about exactly this. Do you want to share? Your hand is up. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I raised my hand too. To add to that is that also when you look at it from a historical perspective too within the church, and you know what Selim and Shady you guys are saying is absolutely right. Another thing that we have to look at from a historical perspective within the last 50 to 70 years with how the state in Egypt has dealt with the Coptic church is that, if you guys remember early on, I had mentioned the General Lay Council, right? So that council was actually abolished in the 60s with Abdel Nasser and Pope Kyrillos, right? And so what happened there, because Nasser was trying to nationalize power, right, to the state. So when he looked at the Coptic church, he said, well, there's too many hands here. I need to deal with one person, right? And so that one person was the Pope. So all councils were pretty much abolished and everything went to the Pope. So yes, you're absolutely right in what you're saying, Sally, and Selim and Shadi. What you guys are saying is that when things do happen, officials say, oh, no, we can't deal with the Coptic church. You guys got to go figure out your crap with the Pope, because you know, we can't do that, right? Because the Pope directly deals with the president, whoever that might be, right? And that's how you kind of get that progression kind of falling down to us today with how things are being played out, right? So everything does fall with the Pope, and that's why you don't see anything happening because of all the reasons everyone here mentioned, whether it's you know, oh, you know, we're going to look bad. You know, you want to destroy the church, as you're saying, Sally, and all this other commentary that plays out, right? And so that's why the article that, Sally, you're mentioning, that me and a few friends of mine, we wrote, and then, you know, we've written a few other things after that. You know, our actions were towards the synod, to the bishops, to the Pope, saying this is what needs to be done. We realized that here in North America, you know, not to sound like a pessimist, nothing was going to get done. We might have great conversations. We might have a few local churches doing some good things, which is great and needed. But when you're looking at a big system perspective, you know, nothing is going to change unless you tap into the hierarchy in Egypt, right? I see Miray's hand is up too, so she could probably talk a lot better about this than I can when it comes to the historical progression. But yeah, that's what I would say to that. So thank you, Sally.
Yeah, thank you, Bubbly. Thank you, Mireille. We'll go ahead and we want to hear from you. And then I think it's been almost 2 hours. You guys are amazing for all sticking around. We can continue, but I don't want anybody to feel like they got to stay. But as long as you all are, you know, happy in this conversation, so are we. So go ahead. Thank you, Mireille.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for hopping in a bit late, but
yeah.
Going off of like Bovni, I was going to say exactly what you were saying, is that this is by design, like the fact that the state doesn't touch the church, and that everything is left to, like, this is deemed internal affairs, and that's by design. And that's by design by the Coptic church, who's like created itself over the past many, many years as the primary and only representative of everything Coptic. And at the same time, it's not like the church hasn't, or the state haven't meddled and arrested Coptic priests for doing several things. Like most recently, like the minute Epiphanius was murdered, like they arrested someone, even though there's no, or at least he confessed under torture, which diminishes that. But I was gonna say, I'm gonna say two things quickly, which is this minority problem is a problem you also see across other communities in Egypt. Like the LGBTQ community is one, but I know that internal to the human rights community, which we're seeing its own Me Too movement around the Coptic Me Too movement started in the beginning. But ultimately, and I saw like Dina's writing this in the comments too, but ultimately like minorities within minorities face a lot of like you're supposed to protect your minority community and at the same time suffer at the hands of like the whoever holds the most power. And I think this precisely leaves me like I always get stuck in this one question that I'm about to like propose, which is like, what does it mean that we seek justice from, or we like seek justice from an institution that is ultimately really harmful? Like, what does it mean to like turn to the police or turn to prisons as ideas of justice when prisons themselves are places in which like sexual assaults and harm and violence is perpetuated? Or like we turn to the police to protect us, but the police themselves perpetuate violence, and we turn to the church to protect us, but the church itself is a really harmful institution. And this is across the board too, like not just the church, but any religious institution. It's a loop, like it's a shitty loop.
Yeah.
And justice, like we understand justice, or like there are various ways to understand justice, but one of them is legal justice, and other ones is like communal justice. But I don't know that we have that in Egypt. I don't know that we have that here. I mean,
No.
not in the US, but we don't have that in the US either.
We don't even have it here.
Like you actually need a very tight-knit community that understands like ideas of communal justice or holding like community members accountable, etc. So we don't have any of that. So, and I know that in the US, this conversation leads to the question of prison abolition. So you altogether get rid of an institution that is a source of harm. But that's it. Like I get stuck on this idea, and I think it's like, I think what Shady brought up is precisely a challenge that you see with Copts, but it's a challenge that you see across other minority communities globally and internal to Egypt.
Yeah, definitely. Can I tell you guys a little bit about what the structure looks like with Coptic survivor world? It's and it's pretty much everywhere. So first, as a survivor, you tell your priest, most likely, hey, someone, a priest, a bishop, a monk abused me, whatever. The priest says, oh, I can't do anything about it. Go to the bishop. The bishop says, oh, I can't do anything about it. Go to the bishop of the bishop that originally ordained that abuser. It's not my responsibility. You go to that bishop. Well, he's not in my jurisdiction anymore. Go to the other bishop. Oh, so when I've gone to every bishop, oh yeah, so go to the Pope now. So I went to Pope Shenouda. So then he finally died after years of me trying to get a hold of him. Now I got to start all over again to get the Tawadros. And then now that this is all out, now that, you know, I'm done working with the church, and, you know, finally I'm the only person ever that got justice in the church, only because they were blackmailed and forced, because I finally got a copy of my investigative report about my own abuse case, which the Pope forbade the investigators from sending me, but by the grace of God only, it was leaked to me. And so that's the only reason I was able to get justice, is because I blackmailed the church with their own investigation. So now what is their move when I call a bishop and I say, hey, I got this survivor calling me. I have all this evidence and you got an abuser serving in your area. They say, well, why didn't she report it to the police? Why didn't she report it to the police? Why don't we report it to the police? Well, when we report it to the police are like, where's your evidence? You know, they don't want to get involved. They don't want to take on cases. The statute of limitations is expired. I have all the proof in the world that I was sexually abused by a Coptic priest. I live in Florida, but because of the laws in Florida, at the time of my crime in 1999, my statute of limitations has been expired. Do you think that the church leaders don't already know that through their lawyers and PR teams? Of course they do. Of course they're already 10 steps ahead of us. They've already checked who do they have to, you know, if the victim statute of limitations is expired, they're going to tell her, well, why didn't you go to the police? Go ahead and go to the police. We can't do anything. We're not going to take any action unless he's found guilty by the police's investigation. Leave it to the professionals to do it. So, you know, it all goes back to that. And so if these patriarchal or religious organizations or organizations with or abusers that are in any position of power, they already know that they're being protected by the law, no matter where we are in the world. It's very, very, very rare to be able to actually go from victim to reporting it to your abuser being charged to an actual trial to him or her being convicted guilty. It almost never happens for us. And we have so much to lose when we come out and put ourselves out like that. We're facing a patriarchy that is absolutely disgusting at its core and evil and rotting at its core. And so that's why people like me and Selim and Shady and any activist in here, that's why these survivors come to us. That's why we end up being the investigators. That's why we end up having to scandalize and publicize whatever it is on social media and band together and do all this work just so the police can make one arrest, maybe.
Yeah. It's an excellent point, Sally, honestly. And Mirai, thank you so much. You said so many things that are exactly what needed to be said, because justice does not need to come from an institution. That's just how the world works, right? We live in a capitalist infrastructure that is led by the powerful. We live in a space that minorities are going to consistently be humiliated because the ones in power need to be look a specific way or talk in a specific way, and they're always going to be running the show in a specific way, and the impoverished are always going to be not taken seriously. A lot of cases come from a lot of people that are impoverished or from different social classes, right? Most of the cases that we've been dealing with are from women that are coming forward that are from a very specific social class, right? Rarely do we hear about the cases that come from a woman that lives in a small hara in somewhere in Cairo or the Ahliya or any other any of our governorates, right? That was assaulted from someone from her own family, right? Because some of these people do not have access to the internet. Some of these people do not have access to the lawyers that we're about to give them. Some of them cannot pay for these lawyers. Some of them cannot be able to leave their jobs, one or two or three jobs, to kind of go to case day in and day out, right? The main problem is stemming from that, right? Kind of this kind of movement in power, which is how we started this conversation, right? Which is people that are in power prey on people that they perceive as weak.
Yep.
And the internet was supposed to be something that kind of equals the kind of playing ground. And I guess we kind of gone to the last phases of Web 2, right? Now there's Web 3, which God protect us from that. And Jesus has talked a lot about like the people that are impoverished and how we should protect people that are, and that's something that is incredibly admirable. Shady wants something to say. Shady.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I wanted to mention, to answer something that was mentioned like a long time ago about patterns of predators. In my eyes, the core of predatory behavior is the abuse of power. And so number one, like 101, of course, is the gender inequality. That is already gave one specific gender power and they abuse it. So that's like the 101. That's like we are born already with that inequality and that power that is always abused. But usually I think so like I mentioned, that's generally where it is first, that gender part, that's there. But where I would usually look as well is usually the power dynamics. And power dynamics and inequality, and where, above the levels of gender now, are a breeding ground for predatory behavior. Be it from an institutional level or just from general like jobs or socioeconomic level. I wrote this extensive, I thought that maybe it could be a piece that I could, give somewhere, but it was like a deep analysis of what are the predatory, the signs and where you find them usually and why. One of which this one was very, very strange. Is the fact that I found nearly all of the predators in all the cases that I was dealing with at the beginning, or that some of them we were dealing with, such as the Fairmont case. Many of them, for some reason, we're talking about the upper middle class. Of course, we already know, like the socioeconomic factor is huge. Is a huge factor with regards to where you find these predators, etc. But and the connections, of course, connections to the government and this and that. That's already you are adding to the power dynamics, and the higher, the more likely you see this kind of behavior. Of course, I'm not denying the fact that you are going to find predatory behavior everywhere because of the general gender dynamic, which I spoke about earlier, the 101. That's where you're born with that already. But I realized back then is that so many of the predators that were being reported always worked. Sorry for anybody here, okay? I'm not just hang with me for a second. Most of these ones, and this is fact, most of these ones all worked in real estate. And I was like, why the fuck did they all work in real estate? And then it just became just like oh, well, surprise, surprise, guess where he works? And then the other person would be like, oh, he works in real estate. I'd be like, yep, he works in real estate. And then so I was trying to analyze and this goes back, of course, to the conversation about the church and the institutions. But I was trying to analyze, getting to that, why were so many people coming out of real estate? And then I realized, because check this out, is that with real estate, the general and they were, I don't know what the specific job is, like not the salespeople or the people that actually get the clients to buy the villas in Egypt. Right now we're talking about Egypt, real estate in Egypt, given the fact that real estate companies in Egypt are selling villas. Therefore, number one, the person has to be well connected. That is already a very, very powerful point. And all of these salespeople, you have to be, so you're well connected to the regime, number one, because that's where you are. Number two, you're well connected within the upper middle class and the elite, because you are the person selling these villas. And all of these real estate companies are always selling villas in Ugiza, in Palm Hills, and all of these places. So they have big connections as well from a socioeconomic standpoint. And not just, you have to be very, very street smart to be able to convince people to actually buy these villas. So this is another one. You have this person is very, very good at convincing. So you are giving, these are, and there are more right now that I can sit and mention, but these are just like the perfect characteristics of a predator. Number one, he knows he can get away with it by convincing. So the next one, which I wanted to mention, was popularity. So he's popular. So people won't believe the victim because he's popular and loved, number one. Number two, he's very, very street smart with his words. He can convince anyone. So he's very, very convincing because he can sell villas and this and that. Also part of the CV, basically, or giving the real estate companies, giving these individuals these jobs, which is, so they know they can convince others that they are innocent and the predators are the victims are the sluts, or they're making this up or whatever. And so the victims are also scared because of their connections, and they would threaten them with their connections. And there are other factors that I consider and talk about, which are much more like intricate. But you see what I mean is that you find predators and predatory behavior within these specific places and institutions that have the most power. And then I also talked about this, Sally. Is that I wrote like a big paragraph. And of course, this is what I was worried about. This is why I never sent this to any, I'm going to get into trouble with this. But about predatory behavior within religious institutions. Religious institutions, and be it shuyukh or priests, etc., especially in lower socioeconomic classes. I don't really don't want to get very, very much detailed into this, but this person to the community is very much like the link between you and God. This individual is untouchable. This individual is trusted by parents and trusted by the community. So he has so much power, one that is unimaginable. They have like, they are the connection this is like, they're the connection between you and God. That is so much power to have over a community and a society. Which is why I think, even though I looked at the statistics on predatory behavior in church and religious institutions, and apparently it's a myth the fact that there are more predators within the church, etc. I don't know. The statistics say so. I don't know. It's strange, but it is what it is. But do you see what I mean about where predators usually linger and where you usually find them? Of course, that doesn't. We're not dismissing the fact that the gender inequality is the 101 already between men and everybody else. But on different levels, you find them in these specific places, and it's always repetitive. It's always very, very much beyond it. But yeah, sorry, that's the point that I wanted to sort
Dina
of
says a good point, Shady,
entertain this.
about
Very good point.
people that work in real estate have access to private places. That's also true.
Have access to what?
To private places in which they could take someone and kind of be predators and kind of be in privacy, right, where no one can kind of see them. And we saw that in ABZ. We saw that in ABZ, right? Having like empty spaces and stuff to kind of do whatever you want, and having access to these kinds of spaces, that makes more sense.
That's how Coptic survivors end up. Most cases is in confession, which is supposed to be a private place. We also have, I think, Melanie, you're still here. Melanie Sakota, Melanie has been working with SNAP. She's part of the SNAP organization for a long time, Survivors Network of Those Abused by Priests. They're actually the trailblazers that started over 20 years ago. And they were the first, hey, Melanie, maybe you could do a better job than me. Yeah, but
actually SNAP started in around 1988, so it's over 30 years.
Wow.
And I came in a little later. I came in, started working with Orthodox survivors in 1999. We finally retired our website a couple years ago, but I still work with SNAP. It's a very, I think one of the things that someone said earlier that I was thinking about was it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. This is not a problem that's going to be solved soon, and you have to, along the way, you have to learn the first thing. You can't help anyone unless you're taking care of yourself. So if you need to take a break, you realize it's a marathon. So you take a break and then you refresh yourself and then you come back.
Yeah.
Again. And that's the way I've done it for the past 20 some years, and it seems to work now. And, in some ways I know that, I'm almost 70 now, so I'm not going to see the end of this, I don't think, but I'm going to be part of the battle. And what Sally said about going to the church, it's very frustrating. It's like, when my children were abused, they were where the priest wanted them. And then when it turned out that there was a predator there, our bishop says, well, why weren't you watching your children? So it's a very frustrating situation. And I think education is the key, really, to tell people that survivors, when they're coming forward, the vast majority of them are going to be telling the truth. And I mean, there's no saying that people, you can't do due diligence, was this person in the parish or whatever, but you have to know that most of the time they're going to be telling the truth. And that should be the premise going forward, and I don't think the general public accepts that. So it's not surprising that people in institutions don't. But that's something that I think is really important to work on, because I think once we get to that point, a lot of other things will fall into place.
Yeah, amen. Thank you, Mel.
It's lovely to meet you, honestly. It's such an honor to meet someone who's been doing this for almost 30 years. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I honestly can't.
That's what happens when you get old. It just you've been doing something for so many years.
Implies when you're solving crime.
That's right.
We're doing this for 2 years. It's like incredibly taxing. I'm in awe of your strength. Honestly, kudos.
Well, you know what they say is that they say women are actually stronger than men. So that's
totally
part of what it
believe
is.
I'm the last person who's going to put up a fight with you on that.
Well, you guys have just been amazing. This has been awesome. I'm surprised. I mean, I guess we needed more than 2 hours for this. We might even need another session for this. Does anybody have any other questions or comments? No? We will wrap up then. I want to thank our speakers for taking the time and our activists here for taking the time, because I know our jobs are nonstop. So thank you for joining. Thank you, Bubbly, for being our mental health backup. Thank you, everyone, for, you know, whoever came last month and came this time. And I hope to see you all next month as well. We're going to do this every first Sunday of every month at the same time. New topics, new speakers, and hopefully we'll even have our speakers join us in the next one and continue this conversation. I love you guys. Thank you. I've put everybody's handles, Instagram and contacts here that I can in the chat. I put my link tree in there as well that has articles, news articles and resources that you can find. Yeah, we'll keep the conversation going. Thank you all
guys
so much.
Thank you.
Sending you all love.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, guys.
everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Sally.
Take care.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Team, anybody still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, hi.
Hey.
Hi.
That was awesome.
Wow, you all are the last one standing. We survived.
Yeah, that was extensive. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good. That was a lot. I didn't think that we would, I wish more men attended, but
You know what? I think we, for what it was, we had a good number, right? So
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
like
Yeah.
John was with Christine, they were sharing one Zoom account, right?
Yeah.
So Peter Aziz was here. I don't know. Do you know him, Sally?
It sounds familiar. Who is that?
So I see him very much active on Facebook. I've never connected with him, but he's out from Cali. I think he might be from LA. And
Okay.
so I think this was my first time seeing him. So that was good. He, from what I see on his social media, he's a pretty, pretty good support and ally. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. How do I stop recording this? Stop. Okay.